No one's here. Here we go. Good morning. Morning, everybody.
Hi,
Welcome.
everyone.
Hi.
Okay, so we're just going to wait for a few more people to come in. The numbers are growing. That's lovely. So welcome everybody to the third instalment of our Office Management Portal panel discussions. Really excited today because we're welcoming someone new to the panel down here on my left corner. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Hen from Henrietta Barker Recruitment, Laura Johnston from the Assistant's Handbook, and Nick Ginsburg from nickginsburg.com and the founder or co-founder of the Global Fireside series. So really excited. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us all the way from Melbourne, Australia today. So our lovely panel.
So good.
So I'll let you guys do a quick intro, if that's okay. Hen, starting with you, and then we'll talk a bit more about the discussion today.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're good. I'm Henrietta Barker. Everybody refers to me as Hen. I'm an executive assistant and business support recruiter. I'm based in London. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm really excited to talk about careers this morning. This, I feel like, is the one that I should know most about in terms of how you develop it and how you create it. I haven't lived your career, but I've watched people grow and develop and how they've done that strategically. So I am excited about this morning.
Great, thank you, and I can't wait to hear what you say as well. Laura, over to you next, my lovely, to introduce yourself, please.
Cool. Hi, everyone. So I'm Laura. I've been on a couple of these panels with Hen and Hannah. So apologies if you've already heard my spiel, but I'm going to repeat it. So I am an executive assistant. I'm currently based in Dubai. I moved in February. Amazing timing because before lockdown, but then horrendous timing, as you can imagine. I have been an EA for 8 years. And I launched the Assistant's Handbook in February as to begin with something to do, and then it's kind of grown and I've got to meet all of these lovely people, which is fantastic. Same as Hen, I'm really excited to kind of see where this discussion goes. We've all had quite different career paths, so yeah, it'd be exciting to see what everyone has to say.
Thank you. And Nick, over to you finally, please, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. I feel like a new Spice Girl is kind of what I feel like. So hi everyone, for those that don't know me, I'm Nick Ginsburg. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I'm an executive assistant at Monash University. I've been there for about 8.5 years, but outside of that, I do a lot of stuff in the EA space. So I'm a speaker and coach, and I do a lot around productivity and efficiencies, but I love talking about career, as Hen knows. We touched on it in the podcast yet. So I can't wait to chat about this. I'm guns blazing. Let's go.
Let's do this. Okay, cool. Morning, Claudia. Just waving hello to herself. So I'll give you a little bit of background, everybody that doesn't know. So this, as I said, is the third panel discussion that we've done now. And we're really excited, I don't know if you can tell, to be back this morning with you, or this evening if you're joining from Australia. We've previously discussed things like titles in admin professions and how they vary so much. More recently, we've discussed training, or more so the lack of it. And off the back of that, we kind of naturally fell onto careers and career progression and career structures and tracks and paths and things for these roles. Both of the previous panel discussions were really well received, so hopefully we'll keep doing them, and they'll be of support to you in your positions. So we'd love to hear about all of your experiences. Do chat to us or ask any questions. Raise your hands if you want to speak, and we can unmute you and you can come online and talk to us as well. So be as interactive and engaging as you feel comfortable to be. What are your career paths? How did you get into the role? And so much more. There's so much more to this topic. So we have some polls that I'm going to kick off with now, just to get the conversation started. And then I'll let you guys vote as well as panelists. And then we will use those results to start off. So Hen, I'm going to kick off with you whilst we're voting. In fact, actually, let me just read the questions first. So the first one is, did you intentionally choose the career you're in? I'm really interested to see the response to this one, because I think admins, right, this is the one where everybody kind of says, did you fall into it, or was it an intentional choice? So interested in that. Do you know what your career goals are? And have you been strategic in your job searches to date to get the types of roles and ultimately the job you want to secure? So those folks are coming in. Hen, starting with you whilst that carries on voting, in terms of careers, what's the first thing you advise people that contact you, candidates that contact you, in regards to their career journey in this profession? Do you give any advice? Do you have any conversations about their career and their path, their strategy?
Yeah, all the time. And I think that the number one thing that I talk about just in every conversation is, where do you want to go? How are you being strategic about progressing your career and developing the role that you're in? Because so many times people come to me and say, you know, I don't like this about my role, I don't like that about my role. But my first advice is, yes, look at the market, see what's out there. But what can you do with what you've got? How can you maximize your results and the experience that you have in the role that you have? Because often we get stuck, we get in ruts about how we're performing in our roles, how assistants are supporting, in what style. There's so much that you can do with what you have in order to set yourself up for your next job. And if you know where you want to go, then we have such a good chance of being able to get you there, and for you to be strategic about how you actually start the process. It's about saying, I want to find something new, or I'm interested in progressing. How do I do it? And you have to find people, and I think in this community there are lots of people who can help you. Whoever resonates with you, you have to find someone who can actually say, these are my experiences, but how can you put these steps in place? And I think often people come to the position where they're talking to a recruiter where they might actually be a bit down. It might be really frustrating. They might not know how to do that. And recruiters aren't always the best people to ask. So engage with the community. But those are the things, that's the number one thing that I would say. Look to what you have and where you want to go, and then work backwards from there. Always look 2 jobs ahead if you can, especially in this climate, especially with this job market.
I love that. I've never heard that before about the 2 jobs ahead, because actually just that advice in itself gets the cogs going in your brain to think about that, because there's much beyond that statement, right? But just keeping that in mind all times, I think, will help people to stay on track and constantly think about their path.
And you work backwards from there. If you're aware of where you want to be, I mean, it's kind of just general coaching practice, but I think in job searches, people can get sidetracked by offers of other jobs. Recruiters present things to you, they sound interested, you're worried about your salary maybe. Those kind of things override often the long-term focus about what you really, really want to achieve and where you want to be. And that's what we try and look at with people, about how they actually develop that career path.
Yeah. Just on that, I mean, anyone raise your hands if you've done it. I certainly have. I've gone off track before because I wasn't desperate to get out of one of the positions I was in, but I just had enough. I was working crazy 12 to 16 hour days on average. That was my average. Sometimes it was sort of 20. And I had to get out for my mental health. I got really ill. All sorts of things were going on. So I was kind of desperate. So who has gone off track because you kind of haven't had that focus, and there's perhaps been that persuasion, like you say, from recruiters, salary temptations, desperation to leave? Anyone else? Yeah, a few of you. Yeah, it happens. And I think that's the thing that you're talking about, right? Is to just try and have that in mind, because when you go off track, it feels pretty crap, because you then have to work so much harder to come back on. Nick and Laura, I'll come to you in a second. I'll just read out these poll results, and then I'd love to get your thoughts on this and some of the other poll questions as well. So, did you intentionally choose the career you are in? So let's just polling. Here we go. So yes, sure did is only 22%, and then no is 67%, and there's a couple that are unsure where it's sort of, and I've said tell us more in the chat if you're happy to. So we'd love to hear more about what you mean by sort of. Do you know what your career goals are? Hell yeah, 56%. So that's really good to see that over half of you are confident and comfortable with where you're going. No, not at all, 33%, and I guess so, again, tell us in the chat if you're comfortable too. And then, have you been strategic in your job searches to date to get the types of roles and ultimately the job you want to secure? Yes, 33%, no, 44%, and unsure, 22%. So really interesting split on that last one. Laura, coming to you on the intentionally choosing your career,
yeah.
What's your experience? What's been your personal experience to date? Did you fall into it? Did you choose it?
So I was convinced, as Hen knows, I was absolutely 100% convinced that I wanted to be a lawyer. 100% convinced. And I decided to make it really difficult for myself with the law degree that I chose to do. And then I looked up from my books at the end of my 5 years. I was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. And that in itself was quite a big realization to have, because you've spent so much time and put so much effort into something. I was like, okay, fine. Well, what do I do now? So I decided to kind of look at the skill set that I had and see if I could match that skill set to a particular role. So it wasn't necessarily looking at an industry, it wasn't necessarily looking at a specific title. It was, I know that I'm very good at XYZ. How can I optimize my job search for that? And I was lucky enough to fall into an amazing executive assistant role, which I was able to grow in. It ended up being in automotive. My dad's massively into cars, so because of that, I have an interest in it as well. And so I fell into it unintentionally, but also very intentionally, by really focusing on how I could take my competences and grow from there. So yeah, essentially.
And how did you fall into it? What's the story there? Was it you were just looking for anything and everything? Did someone present it to you? Can you remember? So
all through university, I was temping, and I had the opportunity. I was temping on the Zara head office desks doing reception. I was at Louis Vuitton a couple of times on reception there, and so was doing quite a lot of admin heavy roles. I then had the opportunity to work for another startup where I was doing some of the marketing and also executive assistant to the founder. This is all through university. And then I pivoted slightly, went to work for, I've always worked in startups, so I went to work for a different startup where I was doing a lot of account management. And so when I started looking, I was like, okay, let's reach out to some of the recruiters in London who I know are specific for EAs, who are specific for people who have my background, and also who are open to placing people who might not have the specific criteria that they're looking for, but they can see that there's a spark. And so the role, I think it was the dual thing of me thinking, oh, being a PA or an EA, that sounds interesting. And then the roles being handed to me because something was aligning in the universe that meant that what I was actively looking for happened to fall on my plate. I think I was very, very lucky with that, especially as I said, come out of 5 years where I'd been hell-bent on doing something completely different.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't done it as yet, listen to the Assistants Together podcast and you can hear more about Laura's story. It's a really wonderful episode. I think then followed by your episode, or yours is just before, Nick, because I listened to them both in a row, so I forget which order, but there we go. I digress. But at Assistants Together on Instagram, and you can see all the episodes on there.
Thank you.
So Nick, I'm conscious you're sitting there and probably dying to share your take on this. So you, I know from listening to that podcast, intentionally went for the job you've got now, right? So tell us more about that, and maybe some advice around how you got there and how you knew that was what you wanted to do.
Yeah, of course. So I started my career in banking, and I wasn't an EA, I wasn't really admin driven, but a lot of the stuff I really loved in my role was EA focused. So it was all the support aspect of the job. When I moved to Melbourne, which was 9.5 years ago, a couple of months after I moved, I met my now husband, and about 6 months later, he said to me, what do you want to do with your life? Like, where do you want to go? I thought, I have a vague idea, but we'll see. He's like, look, start looking at where you want to go. So I thought, okay, get into the university sector. I knew that they're big enough to be able to sort of suss out where you want to go. and got into a very junior role in the university. I was a finance purchasing officer, which all power to those roles, but that is not for me. And I sat there, and I was actually in the chancery, so where the big wigs are at the university. And I remember looking at this lady who I'd been working with closely. Her name's Di Forwerda, and I went, I want that. That is what I want. I knew that I wanted it because it was so much around
her role, not her, right?
Oh yeah. No, God. Barking up the wrong tree, Hannah. So I knew that I wanted it. It was problem solving. It was relationship building. It was kind of like this dream role of all the things that I love. And so I sat down with a friend and I was like, right, this is what I want. How do I get there? How do I get from this point to there? And I knew that it was not going to be sort of a straight line. And so I did a quick cert for in HR, went into HR in the university because I knew it would give me the broadest experience to be able to say, no, hey, I can do that. And so I was essentially an EA to the business partners in HR for a long time, but it wasn't called an EA. But interestingly, talking about getting distracted, during that time in HR, there were a couple of PA roles that came up that were very junior, sort of entry-level PA roles, which was great for me. And I came so close to applying for them. And this little voice was like, no, that's not right. I've just got to wait. And then a whole series of events happened, ended up sort of sitting and waiting for this right role, and it came about. I applied for it, I got it. But the whole part of that is, or the biggest tip that I can say, if you can stay focused in what you want. So not about money, I mean, money's part of it, but what are the aspects of whatever job you've loved that you really adore? Like, what are the things that speak to your heart? The things that make you so excited to get to work or to dive into your emails. I know that's weird.
Like that fire in your belly feeling.
Yeah.
That's the thing I talk about all the time, that you feel in your heart because it's so strong.
Yeah. So focus on those and find a job that ticks the majority of those boxes and get your sights set on it. It doesn't have to be in the company you're in. If it is, that's great. If it's not, that's also great. But find something that ticks the majority of those boxes and run for it. I mean, the biggest thing that I find, and I'm aware of my privilege. I get that I'm a man in this world and will kind of throw my hat in the ring for fun because I think I can probably tick 7 of those things. But my life, I've been surrounded by women. I have 2 mums. There are women everywhere in my life. And so many of them don't apply for jobs because they feel like they're not qualified, because they only tick a certain amount of the boxes, and it's crap. Even if you tick, and Hen, I'm sure you'll back me up on this one, if you tick 7 of the 10, go for it. Go for it. So I'll get off my high horse now. But that is kind of my biggest things, my gripes at the minute, sort of to push people.
And I think that's really important, because to know yourself and to know where that fire, that desire, that passion comes from, taking the time, if you've not already done it, to write down what you actually enjoy doing, as well as where your strengths are and what you're good at, but hopefully they'll start to align somewhere, because generally what we're good at, we often enjoy as well. Not always true, but often the case. And I think if you do that and you can recognize, one, it will help you to see your key skills and your strengths, but also why you love what you do. And if you don't, then perhaps it's time to reflect and look at moving away from that. You mentioned salary, and I want to make sure that we discuss this, because one of my office management portal members couldn't make it, but she's going to watch the replay, as I know a lot of people tend to with these. And she had a question. So there was a topic raised in our portal Slack channel this morning about salaries. And it's a taboo topic, right? People shouldn't be discussing them and so on. But let's just put our cards on the table here, that it's a safe space and we can have these conversations and be open and honest with each other. So she asked to bring up, is there a way, to bring it up with your manager without having the fear of losing your job in these days? I know now isn't the best time to talk to your manager about it, but if you think about it, we are high risk right now. So she's an office manager, 200 people she looks after in her office as an office manager. And basically the threshold that the other member had asked about was, is it wrong that office managers are paid sub 30k, so 30,000 GBP? I'm not sure what that translates to in like 55, 60 something. Can't remember on it. But yeah, so you know, so someone had raised this, and I said I think it's poor that office managers are paid below that. And I think the same can be said for assistants as well, depending on where you are in your career path, depending on obviously the location of the employer as well, because if you're in London, I don't think that's a fair salary. If you're entry-level office manager, it's a small office and your responsibilities are junior, then you know there's progression. But does anyone have any advice for her? Because she doesn't want her manager to think she's being ungrateful, or put her job at risk because of the environment at the moment.
I do, definitely. I think I want to say, if you're going to go in and ask for a pay rise, you're going to need to back it up. And the best way to talk about it is to talk about it in advance. You need to go into a meeting and ask to speak to somebody about your career path and progression. You then have to tell them your intention. This is what I want to achieve. What do I need to do it? What can I do as part of this job that is going to allow me to take on more responsibility, to show what you can do, to really challenge yourself? You can say that's my intention and then get some goals in place in that. The worst thing you can do is to go in and say, this is what I want. Because you put them on the defensive straight away. They're going to go, okay, well, why do I need to give it to you? Why do you want more money from me? And we don't know in any business at the moment what their real financial situation is. You're assuming they've got the money to give you, where in actual fact, they may not. And they may be really struggling. That's not your responsibility. But I think in the sense that if you actually talk about this in advance and set something up for 6 months, maybe, which goes fast, you're in a position to add value to the business and to show what you are doing. You can back up and then you can ask for a meeting in 6 months' time and say, these are the things that I've done. How do you feel about it now? The worst thing I think you can do is just to cold go in and say, I want a salary increase. Even if you've got facts about what you've done in the past, they are coming from this point, and you don't want to put people on the defensive. You're right to go in for a pay rise if that's what you want. I 100% agree. You don't have to feel nervous and that you shouldn't ask for it. But I think you have to give yourself a time frame, let people know what your intentions are, because then they know that you're working for them. Then they know that you're coming in to actually create something for them, and you're working with their strategic goals. All businesses have strategic financial goals, and if you're not helping them achieve them, then you really have a difficulty in being able to progress in any role in your career, especially at the moment. The thing that will set people apart is for you to understand the goals that the business has and how you are strategically working with the company to make sure that they're hitting them. Everybody's under pressure. Please make sure that you give yourself a runway of being able to say, that's my intention and this is what we're going to do. And you work with them to identify what they need, whatever it is, because the outcome is more likely to be successful if you give them the heads up about what you're trying to create for yourself.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's spot on. Does anyone have anything to add to that, Laura or Nick?
I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Hen said. It's really, I've been in situations before where I've had to basically say my salary expectation, or in the context of a review, for example, I don't agree with whatever was said in the review. Can we have a discussion about it? I appreciate that's very different to the situation that we're in at the moment. But as Hen was saying, as long as you go in armed with all of the knowledge, all of the information, and can say, how can we work together to get here? Yeah. It's much better than going in and kind of stamping your feet and saying, I want more money, because that never works, ever.
Yeah, it's a longer conversation, isn't it? It's not a a flick of a switch. It's not an overnight thing.
No.
And I think that's the thing to bear in mind. Your expectation may be here, but you just need to bring it down slightly to be realistic and have some room for understanding of what that company's position is. But you know, nonetheless, you should still table it, because if you don't speak now, you know, forever hold your peace kind of thing. And I think it's so important, because it's a learning lesson as well, right? It builds on your confidence. It is such an empowering thing to do, particularly if the results are positive. And even if they're not, you've done it. You know, you get that kind of feeling before you go in. And if you're like me, sometimes my skin goes blotchy. So if you're like that, wear a high neck top for that day. But you know, your adrenaline's pumping, but when you do it, it feels so good, and it feels like such a relief to know that you have addressed that. And that's the same for a number of issues, I think, where our careers are concerned. Nick, do you have anything?
Other than saying that, of course, I agree with everything that Hen and Laura said. I think an important thing that I've learned over the years, so I'm quite an emotional person, so I can store the emotion. Yeah. And I'm also a really bad liar. So everything reads on my face. So I've really learned over the years in having these kinds of discussions, it's about really sticking to the facts. So don't get sidetracked with your personal feelings about what you feel you should be paid. It's about, well, I bring this and that equals this. It's hanging on to the facts and making sure that conversation is driven by facts as opposed to whatever feelings you've got inside. Because the moment that they creep in, all it takes is one word wrong and someone's on the defensive, then you're on the defensive, and then all of a sudden it's a disaster conversation. So keep it to the facts and try and keep the emotions out of it. And it's really hard, I'm not going to lie. I'm still not great.
It is, and I think it's all in the preparation. I think, you know, making those notes a few days before you want to go in and have that conversation, and definitely have it face to face. Either do it in a one-to-one so it doesn't feel so pressured, because you've said, look, can I have a conversation with you? If you have regular weekly one-to-ones, whatever it might be, obviously if you don't have them, then bring it up separately, but hopefully you have regular one-to-ones and put it on your agenda there. I often do it as part of a shit sandwich. Has anyone used this kind of thing before? I would put it in the middle, because to me it's the thing that I'm kind of you know, anxious about. I would reel off my goods and my positives and what I'm doing and what I've done and how much money I've saved or whatever it is first, and then I'd say, you know, I want to have a conversation with you about my compensation package, and you know, I hope it's okay to have this, and start the discussion and have kind of 3 or 4 points. You stay on track and you don't make it personal, because I'm like you, I am a terrible liar. I wear my heart on my sleeve. It's all out there. And, you know, in the back of your mind, you're like, if I had this extra money, then I could move home, or I could buy a better car because my car's breaking down all the time, or whatever it might be. There's always a personal gain from it, because you're talking about money at the end of the day. But you need to stick, like you say, to the facts, your achievements, and what value you bring to that company. I think to my member that raised this question, and to anybody on this call or watching the replay, reach out to any of us. We're all on Instagram. I'll put our handles. Is it called handle? Yeah. What a handle, or is that Twitter? Sorry, technophobe. But I'll put our @handle things on the YouTube channel, so you can find us and reach out to us. Nick does a lot of career sessions. Hen does Hen at 10 and all sorts of other career tips and advice. So so hopefully we can help, you know, on a one-to-one if you need it and you need some help with your prep. I'm just going to go to the chat now, because we've had a couple of comments and questions on here. So Becky has said that she started at her company as a recruitment assistant, didn't like it, loved the company, and an office management role, yay, office manager, came available. So she jumped at it simply because she wanted to stay at her company. She likes the role, but gets a lot of imposter syndrome, and doesn't know where in her career she can go, because her manager's an EA and doesn't do the same job as her. So she doesn't know where her progression is. And I'm really keen to get on this topic of progression, because I think this is where we left off in the last discussion and how we got onto careers, right? Is where do we go from here? So Laura, you look like you're ready.
I'm ready to go.
You're ready to
go.
go.
Yeah, I think with, as we've said many times, the EA office manager space, there isn't a linear path, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment. I've seen maybe 4 or 5 different LinkedIn articles saying, oh, well, after EA you become chief of staff, and that seems to be like the natural progression. And then for OM it's like, oh well, you've done OM, so you could go into facilities, or like more facilities for like a bigger company, or you could go here, or you could go there. But there doesn't seem to be, as you would have in, say, a management consultancy, where you can be like, right, I am a junior analyst, then I become an analyst, then I become this, then I become that. But I would flip it and say that you don't necessarily have to look for a different job title. You just need to look for a role that allows you to grow. So I've been very lucky in pretty much every role that I've had, where I've started it really small, and then like Lego blocks, I've been able to tack on different things that I do, which meant that when I left my previous company, I had this sprawling job description because of a lot of legacy stuff that I'd had the opportunity to do. And so I guess my advice when it comes to progression is maybe don't get so hung up on saying, right, this is my job title today, this has got to be my job title tomorrow, and I'm going to leapfrog to there. Instead, look at, I currently work for this company and I can do X, Y, Z, but I want to also be able to do 1, 2, 3. And then find how you can get to there, whether you're staying industry agnostic, whether you're staying specific to an industry, or if you want to move horizontally. A lot of my friends are very good. They're not EAs, but they're very good at one thing, but they can move horizontally because they've not pigeonholed themselves within a particular sector. So yeah, I guess that would be my advice. Nick and Hen, I don't know how you would take it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think career progression is hard. It's harder than people imagine, because we, like we said about the roles, we just don't have, what does it mean to you? If the title's the same, the salary is pretty much the same, what's available to you in that that's interesting to you? And as Nick was saying that, or Hannah as well, what we were talking about this, what you love to do and what you're good at. Your success comes in this intersectional point between what you're good at and what you love to do. And if you can find roles that allow you that, then you're progressing as far as I'm concerned. The job title, everything else is secondary, in my opinion, in terms of my career too. I think it's very difficult for people to position themselves and know what they really want. It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I 200% agree with that. I don't look at career progression at a linear line of okay, so from this role I go into this role, and then to this role, then to this role. I mean, there are jobs that are like that, but for me, it's exactly what Hen says. It's okay, so if I'm challenging myself in my next role and it's all the things I love, that's a progression. So as long as that keeps rolling, I'm okay. But I just want to say one thing in terms of career progression. I went from, technically my title before I became an EA was recruitment consultant. So I went from a recruitment consultant to an EA with absolutely no EA experience. So when you're looking at your roles and where you want to go, it's not about what title you have now. It's all about the duties within that role and what are your strengths. So looking at what you really love, picking those out and addressing those really clearly in your application and within your interview, and make that connection to whatever job you want to go to. So for me, it was all around support. So I do all of this in this current role, and that links to the executive assistant role here. So it was very clear that I could do the job. So, and I think that's really important, that you don't get stuck on whatever title it is or isn't.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing, we do get hung up on titles because to us that gives us some sort of feeling of status, seniority, climbing the ladder. You know, and we've had this debate briefly in these discussions, and I'm sure it will go on, because EAs, assistants, some people feel like the office manager's junior, and some people feel like the assistant's junior. And I think it very much depends on the organisation. So in Becky's case, clearly the structure there is that the assistant position, or certainly her bosses, is more senior because she manages the office manager. In most organisations I've been in, and we're talking about generally in the financial sector, I've always, as the office manager or operations manager, whatever the titles are, managed the admin team. So I've managed upwards of 20 assistants. So my experience and my view is that actually for me, and in terms of salary as well, office and operations manager was more senior. So I think it depends on your experience, and that will change probably as you go from different industries and different companies on their structure and their own views on it as well. So I just want to chat, because I know there's a couple of people on here asking about office management progression. And I think with EAs, very briefly, and I'd love to get your thoughts in a second as well, I think the path can be quite clear. You can go from, if you're talking about titles, team assistant to PA to EA to, you know, kind of private PA or HNWPA or EA, whatever it might be, and you can follow that kind of track and you can feel the progression. But if you go straight into an office management position and that's your career, and even if you move companies and your salary goes up, you might get some additional responsibilities. That is progression, by the way, just to make it clear. That a lot of people are asking, and do generally ask me and members in the portal, what is the progression for an office manager? And I did a presentation recently, so I'm just going to look at my slide here, because I did a bubble chart to show where I think there are options in these roles. So some of it is about gaining additional responsibilities, like Nick said. So for example, if you're not managing anybody at the moment and there's an opportunity that you see, for example, some assistants that aren't really managed by anyone, they report into the people that they look after in their capacity in their role, but they're not really managed and mentored and trained and looked after in a way that possibly you could as the office manager. So if there's an opportunity to do that within your role, try and grab it and start to gear those conversations, much like the salary conversation. Do some prep, start to just do things off your own back, like maybe just invite them all into a training session if you want to, about how to do an office move, or, you know, fire safety, whatever it might be, and start to build that relationship with them like you're their mentor already. And then you know, you can start to have those conversations with your managers to say, I really think they could benefit from a line manager within the same profession as them, rather than someone who does, you know, the finances for the entire company, or runs the company and talks to clients and has no idea what it takes to be an admin. So that's my advice there for that. So then you can look at things like global office manager. So if you're in a company that has global offices and they don't have a global head, looking at that. Head of administration, so this is kind of managing the admin team tacked on. Procurement manager, so I think Nick, you've done a little bit of that in the past by the sounds of it, but because procurement is quite heavily part of an office and facilities management role, some people I know just go into procurement directly. And you're talking about sort of corporate companies, so like JP Morgan, RBS, where I've been in the past, they'll have an entire department dedicated to procurement, tendering, benchmarking, and so on. Health and safety officer, dare I say it, if you like health and safety like I do, because I'm a geek, then you could just go down that route of being a health and safety officer in its own right. And there is so much, particularly again in bigger companies, that you can do there. Centre managers, so you're looking at kind of co-working spaces where you might have a little bit of a sales side as well there, because you have to sell space. So that might bring in another one of these kind of passions that you have to get you know, that fire in your belly going, because you've got target driven as well as your kind of day-to-day office and facilities management. Building manager or facilities manager for the actual building, so the hard and soft services. HR manager, a lot of people already do HR in these roles, and then they progress fully. I can't remember what the qualification is, I always forget it. Hen, do you know what's the not ACAS, is it ACAS?
No, that's the I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone knows what I mean, the qualifications, I think there's like 5 levels you can get to go into HR, then chat, because my brain's gone empty. And then
CIPD.
CIPD, yes. Well done, Alex, as well. Thank you. That's the one. And then COO or CFO.
Yeah.
So to give a little bit of personal background, before I started this company, that's the track I was on. I wanted to be COO. I said to my boss, we need a COO in this office. It was a German company, private investment bank. And the ops side, we were all on one floor, and it was just a mess when I joined. It was just an utter mess. So I said, look, I'm going to sort out the London office within a year, as promised, because they headhunted me for the role, and I said, yeah, I'll do it within a year and sort it out. And then, you know, I really think you need a COO. And he said, well, why don't you do it? And I said, I'd love to, but I'm not ready yet. I need more exposure and experience to compliance, legal, finance, but I'd love to. So we started having some mentoring sessions to get there. So that to me is a really incredible position to get to, as well as some of these kind of head of HR positions. Breathe. They're the ones that I think, because for those of you saying, where do I go? I think there is a plethora of career paths for office managers and assistants. Because if like Dana said, and I'll read her question out in a second, but like Dana said, if you have an interest in office management, grab it, start doing stuff, this is how I got into it, start getting involved in office moves. I saw the office manager like Nick did in one of my companies, and I was like, I want to be her. I want to be doing that. That looks cool. Like, she looks like she has fun. And yeah, and I got involved in an office move, and that was it. I fell into it kind of intentionally in that way. So right, Dana's question is, she's an EA but also performs a lot of office management roles. She's asked multiple times for a title change and has been refused. She enjoys office management and wants to advance in her career more towards that side. Her current office manager said she doesn't have a desire to advance, but she does. Dana does. What's our advice for best approach, both in company and also perhaps looking for new roles? Hen, should we come to you?
Sure. Hi, Dana. Hope you're well. It's nice to hear from you. I think, okay, so there's two kind of sections to that, I think. One, you are an office manager. So for me, don't worry about it. If you're doing the job title to me isn't going to mean anything if you're coming to talk to me about it. I can see that you've done it. You talk about it, you've got experience in it. That's the way that it is. It, in terms of in company, sometimes you're not going to win that. And I think if you can take the sting out of it, that yes, you want the recognition perhaps, or you want the progression or the understanding of what you're doing, you might just not be aligned with that executive assistant. But inside yourself, you know what you're doing and you know what value you're bringing. So keeping track of what you're doing that and what you're doing, understanding how you're developing. And I know you spend a lot of time developing. I see you on Instagram and stuff, you're developing your career. You're learning all the time, which is great, and exactly what people have to do at the moment. It's an aggressive market, and everybody has to understand what they're doing and what their goals are in terms of bringing value. But if you were coming to me to talk about a job, I'm not worried about your job title, because we have, as we've spoken about before, so many different job titles. It depends on what your actual duties are and what your passion is and where you have that creativity. So develop what you're doing. But if you were coming to talk to a recruiter, really don't worry about it. It's fine.
Nick, anything to add on advice there in terms of the move over?
Nothing major to add on to what Hen said. I think she sums it up, as you can imagine, beautifully. I do think though, if you, and I know I keep harping on about this, but if you really just focus to the things that you love and attack those and figure out where they can take you, that's what you should be focusing on. So I understand the desire to have a title change, but the title isn't everything.
No.
So don't get hung up on it, and don't sort of flog a dead horse. It's just not going to go anywhere. So really focus on the stuff that you love, that are in that new title that you want, what you perceive that to be, and find ways to sort of get there, even externally, if you can't do it within the current company.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, I would say, Dana, to look, and to anyone else, maybe Becky as well, to look at, you know, what that to me in offices, there is always so much to be done. As a PA, as an office manager, you know, whatever the title is, in these back office support roles, there is always something to be done. I think it's a case of having that eye to look for it. And it sounds like you want that. So when you're next in the office, when you're next online, look at things that need improving. And it doesn't matter what capacity that would normally sit under, but if you have the time, and if not, try and perhaps make some time to just grab proactively these additional projects and these additional items to get involved in. And start to think about which ones would possibly sit under an office management type role. So, you know, very much tagging on to what Nick and Hen have said, and the things that you would enjoy doing as well. And then start to demonstrate to people and tell people that you're doing these. You know, drop it into your one-to-ones. Oh, by the way, I saw that this needed improving, so I've done this, and I've completed this. And this office move that we're doing, I've put my name in the hat to get involved in it. And what I've done is set up a project list, and I've spoken to some other office managers, because I think, Dana, you're on the portal, so you can get connected there. And I know you're in part of some of the other member forums, so I've got some advice from other office managers, so I can bring some stuff to the table here. So I want to get involved. I would start to do it like that, rather than pushing just that title change first, because you almost need to back it up, like we're saying with the salary conversation, with examples as to what you know, else constitutes that. And if you're already doing all of those things, then just keep doing it and keep demonstrating it. But yeah, maybe like you said, it's time to move on, and I would chat to Hen if that's where you are, to get some advice on doing that move.
Just quickly, I wanted to jump in 1 second to add on to what Hannah was saying, because it's such a good point. When you're having those discussions around wanting to take on new projects or take on new things, it's so important to do it confidently. And I know that sounds like such a catchphrase, but if you walk into an office, it doesn't matter who it is, and say, hi, look, I've been wanting to get involved in this and it's something that really interests me. Would you mind if I took this on? No one's going to say yes. Like, no one's going to say yes. And if they do, it's probably out of pity, not to be harsh, but that's kind of what it is. Whereas if you walk in and say, hi, I've got this skill set, I know that I can help you on this, can I jump on board?
Or just, I'm doing it.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Relationship with the manager and the company, just, I'm doing it. I fully agree, and thank you so much for adding that on, because you're right, there is an element of confidence and an air of confidence that you need to possess to have these kind of conversations. So yeah, thank you for adding that on. Okay, so I now want to just come back to career path, and so Claudia at the start messaged, I think just us panelists, but about you know, and there were some people that weren't sure if they were kind of on the right career path and things. So let's just focus for a little while on getting back onto that path and some top tips. So let's say maybe 3 top tips from each of us on how you get onto that career path and how you identify with it. So we've already covered some of the items about the passion and what you're good at. What else can we do to get on that career path and stay on track?
Shall I go first?
Sorry, I'm muted because the baby's crying, so I'm like constantly muting. Laura, to you first.
So I'm going to preface everything that I'm about to say by saying that my intention for 2020 was one thing, and as you'll have seen, I put it on Instagram, what actually has happened so far in 2020 is not what I was expecting at all. So it's meant that I had to learn to not be blinkered and to basically be like, right, well, everything has gone out the window. Now what do I do? So it's meant that as opposed to being very rigid with my career path and saying, this is what my passion is, this is the industry that I want to be in, this is what I can do, blah, 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 I've had to kind of step back and be like, right, what is a must-have in whatever it is that I want to do and where I want to go, and what are nice to haves. So a nice to have could be, I mean, I'm in Dubai, so a nice to have would be, I don't want to have to drive longer than 20 minutes to get to work. That's just a nice to have. It doesn't impact upon the role. A must have is, I want to be joining a company where I feel empowered, where if I want to jump into a project, I can do, where in 6 months' time, if I want to pivot into something different, or tack on something else, I have the opportunity to do that. So it's, I guess with the career path and kind of the progression that you have on it, it's having a vague idea of where you want to go, or this is what's always worked with me. Have a vague idea of where it is that you want to go, but be open to having to take the blinkers off and doing something different. So that's not the same as being distracted. As you were saying, you don't want to go down a rabbit hole and in 5 years' time kind of look up and be like, oh no, I've lost sight of my future. But it is being open to something different. So take these panels. The first time Hannah asked me to do this panel, I was sat in my flat like, oh no way will I do that. And then
I had no idea.
Yeah, I was
just like, she's up for it, yay. Wow, okay.
Yeah, like I was really excited, but also really terrified because the imposter syndrome kicked in of, oh, but like Hannah's super successful and Hen is clearly super successful. And Lauren knows what she's doing about who was the fourth person on the panel. What can I possibly bring? And that also feeds into the career path, because if you allow yourself to think, right, I want to go there, but as Nick was saying, I only tick 7 out of the 10 boxes, which is something I'm 100% guilty of doing, then you're never going to kind of reach it. So yeah, to sum up, I guess, with career paths, it's have an idea of where it is that you want to go, but don't be so hell-bent on it that you don't notice that something better might be there just outside of your vision.
Okay, Nick, coming to you next for your tips.
I mean, how do I follow that?
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So, I mean, of course, I completely agree. I think it's so important about the blinkers. So a very, very, very short story. About 18 months into my first EA role, there were some changes in staffing, and all of a sudden I was kind of offered this role that in my head I thought it was a bit more junior, but in reality it was probably a sidestep. And I almost said no to it. And if I had have said no to it, I wouldn't be in the role I am now. So if I had said, no, I'm good, thank you, I'm just going to stay here, I would still be in that role. And so I think that is really important. But I think also separately, so I've been doing a lot of work this year around where I want to take my work that's outside of my 9 to 5. And so much of that has been around looking forward, so really sort of future planning, but then breaking it down into tiny bite-sized pieces. So what is it that I need to tick off and to start doing to be able to get in there? And again, with the blinkers, there's been stuff that I've said yes to that was not on my list. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm down, let's go. So, and I think that, I mean, prime example, I mean, I did not have the Techspert Summit, if anybody attended that. So Michelle Bowditch, myself and Rhiannon Ward did that. It feels like 8 years ago, but it was actually at the start of COVID. But that whole, that was not on my plan. And that totally changed everything for me outside of work. So it's so important to kind of break stuff down, but have that flexibility to be able to maneuver.
Yeah,
so,
be open.
Thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk.
Hen, your TED Talk time.
Oh, great. So I agree with everything that everybody says completely about careers, and that you've got to be focused on what you want, but not so rigid that you break when you don't find it, but you find something more interesting. What I really think is really an important part at this point in people's careers is that because the market is so different, people are going to maybe have to take a slightly different tack than we're used to. And I think that if you're in a job at the moment and you're lucky enough to be able to keep it and know that you've got a job and some security, then I think that your career path at the moment, the main focus, given such a competitive market, is that you really go in and know how you are really going to add value to this business at this time to show that you're relevant and you're going to stay relevant. You may, as we all have career breaks. career pauses, you get sidetracked. This could be one of those times. You may have wanted to move, you may have wanted to set yourself up for a new challenge, and that was on your kind of goals list for 2020. Start looking, start developing, and that may have to be on hold for a little bit. There are periods of time that we all have to take time out for health, whatever it is. And I think the career break, and this is a pause definitely for many people in their careers, this is going to be a real moment where you can identify what you're doing, how you build on the role that you have, get everything out of it that you can possibly get in terms of experience and knowledge and practice, and wait if you're looking to start something, if you don't have to and you're in a privileged position of having a role. Just please make use of this time for yourself to really identify what you want going forward and start planning, like Nick was saying, strategically how you get there. And really emphasize, I can't stress enough this my knowledge of what people are going through, that if you can show and know what the business goals are and align yourself with those goals in terms of the work that you're producing and how you are supporting someone, that's going to be most of your career progression right there. That's the one thing that most people don't do. And if someone comes to me with a CV and they've got very many similar things that are happening on their CV. CV is a whole other topic I could talk about all day, so you have to stop me on my new TED will be CVs. But that if you've got all these duties that are similar to other people, you need to stand out, and by absolutely emphasizing the fact that you know about what your boss's strategic goals are. What do they want to achieve this month, this year? What pressure are they under? Where can you help them? Dive in now into that if you don't do it already, because this understanding of the business and its structure and goals is what is going to set you apart. If you want a chief of staff role, they're the ones that are setting the agenda. They are at the table putting that information in place. So if that's where you think you might want to go, or you want to take on a very senior EA role, you really have to be able to show that these are things you're really confident with. So learn about financials, read about the market, follow hashtags on LinkedIn if you want to move into a different market. Understand and immerse yourself in the marketplace that you're in so that you can add all of that value. If you're going in saying, I saw this happen last night, God, it's awful, what do you think this is going to mean? I mean, okay, you're at a different level, you're positioning yourself. So you can do this wherever you are in your career. It doesn't have to be going into a chief of staff role. Immersing yourself and understanding it is my biggest career progression tip. And I think it just allows you to set yourself apart from everybody else. That's it. That's all
That's it, thank you.
Sorry, Hannah, just quickly, can I add something for people who maybe aren't working or who've had to take an enforced sabbatical? So I didn't work for 6 months this year, and that was devastating because it wasn't the plan, obviously, but it also meant that I took it as, right, I still need to push, and I still need to use these 6 months to, how can I put it, to forward my career in a way that I will never have the opportunity to do again. So between my 2 jobs ago and then the job that I just left, I took a month off. I was very lucky to be in a position to be able to do that. I have a very loving, supportive boyfriend who was just like, yeah, that's fine, you're unhappy, you just take the time that you need. And that was great because I'd chosen it, whereas this time around I hadn't chosen it, which meant that the way that I approached it had to be completely different. So I thought, right, and I think the advice would be, look at what people are doing around you. So I watched the conference that Nick did, and that was like a massive kick. I was like, okay, fine, well, they can do it, therefore I can do it, and I can talk about it. And make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who you can either kind of look up to and be like, right, how did they get there? But also have the knowledge of, I have this skill set, how can I build on it even more? So I use Code Academy to teach myself how to code, for example. It's not something that I use every day, but it's a different thing that you can talk about in an interview. But I was talking about for the role I've just had. I was asked about my blog and how I got it. I was like, oh, I was bored, and so I decided to learn something new, essentially. And so I guess when you're looking at your career path and things like that, like really, if you are not working, really focus on how can I use this. And that might not be every day. There were days where I was at the bottom of my bed under a duvet, and I was like, I don't want to do anything. But then all of the other days, I was like, right, let's just work out what it is that I want and just go for it, essentially. So yeah, sorry to drag it off onto a tangent, but I think it's important to kind of recognize that it doesn't always go to plan.
No, and you can speak better than any of us at the moment because you have quite literally just been in that situation. So I think that will resonate with a lot of people possibly on this webinar now, but also who will watch the replay. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's not all roses and an easy thing, and we're not saying that by any means. You know, I've had to fight really hard for my career, and it's been harrowing at times to get the jobs I want. When I haven't got the jobs I wanted, I've really kicked myself. When I went off track, I remember just crying my eyes out for like a week because I was so upset that I'd gone off track. You know, it's a personal thing. And if you're passionate and you have ambition and desire to achieve something, no matter what it is, no matter how big, how small, salary can be completely ignored, you'll have an internal drive that's part of your makeup to be something, to be someone. And that's whatever it is to you, because it's your choice, it's your life, it's your career. And I think when people or you F with it by accident, unintentionally, because other people come into your life, you know, bosses make you redundant, whatever it is, it hurts, and it takes a lot of mental strength to get back on that track. So hopefully the advice that we've given and what Laura's just given will help, because, you know, we've all been there, and in different shapes and forms, and it's not easy. So hopefully these sessions can help you to realize that, but also to put your best foot forward when you can and get to where you want to go. So just very quickly, my tips, and actually one of them was to surround yourself with people that inspire you, to surround yourself with people that you want to be. So like Nick had that lady that he was like, I want to be that, or I want that, I think he said, but I want to be that I want to do that job. And the same was for me. You know, if you recognize that, because it might just be a fleeting thought, but grab onto it, take it out of your subconscious, pull it into your conscious, and, you know, really digest it and understand why, and work through it, because they're the kind of moments to recognize that there's something going on there that's telling you who you want to be and where you want to be. And also network. And I think, Nick, you had this on a career tips this week, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Network. So there are so many networks now for EAs, PAs, office managers, admin professionals. More than, I mean, I'm 30, how old am I? How old am I? Oh God, am I 36 or 37? I'm not sure. I think I'm 36. I genuinely can't remember.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'm 36. Anyway, and you know, at the start of my career, I kind of knew that I wanted to be in London and wearing this wonderful suit and high heels and this kind of stuff, and be in administration. I wanted to be a private PA and things like that. But what wasn't available to me, or I certainly didn't know they existed, and I don't think they did, was networks. Physical networking, virtual networking. I mean, when I started my career, I was in DOS. I think I said this on the last discussion. So these online forums and things did not exist. We didn't have mobile phones in the same degree. My mobile phone was green screen with like a black, you know, aerial that you could pull up. I loved it actually, but anyway, that's digressing. But you know, there are so many tools out there. Oh, happy birthday!
Oh,
happy birthday, Catherine!
Happy birthday, Catherine!
It's funny, isn't it? I think it was like 33 I got to, and I was stood buying a lottery ticket, and we usually put our ages down, and it was the first time I forgot how old I was, and I was stood in Tesco at those lottery stands, and I was like, count it. And people were looking at me like I'd lost the plot. And yeah, so happy birthday. That's really nice news. Yeah, so there are so many networks around. We're doing some research at the moment because I recognise how many there are, and I think for people looking for it, it's such a minefield to know which ones are right for you. So my assistant is currently doing research for a blog, hopefully will come out in September, about all of the different ones that we can see and we can find, and the pros, and not necessarily the cons, but the pros and what you get, whether they're free, paid, etc. So keep your eyes peeled for that, because that may help you to narrow down which ones you want to be part of. Because being part of all of them, I think, would be overwhelming. So you want to try and find the ones that identify with you and give you the benefits that you're looking for. So whether it's training, it's events, it's career progression, it's a community, it's a bit of all, it's resources and so on, you know, then you can have that in mind. So network, get out there, network, virtually, physically, online, in all these different hubs and Slack channels and memberships, because you never know who will help you get that job, quite literally, who, you know, it's who you know a lot of the time, but also who you'll learn from. So hopefully, even if it's just one piece of advice that you take away from this panel discussion, that's something that we have been able to give to you. And that is absolutely my aim. I know it's all of our panel's aims as well, to just give something back from our experiences, from you know, the professions and the learning that we've had in our lives. And if you can get that from these networks as well, and you join 1, 2, 3, and you know, weekly, monthly, you just get something from each of them that helps you to get on your career path, learn some additional tools, whatever it might be. It's all adding to your journey, and all adding, you know, bows to your string. Is it strings to your bow or bows to your string? I've had 4 hours sleep. I should explain why my brain isn't quite working. But yes, that one. Strings to your bow. Thanks again, Alex. Right. Are there any other questions? Because I'm conscious we've gone over the hour. So thank you so much, everybody, for staying with us. Are there any other questions that anybody wants us to address? If you do have any, we can answer them in the aftermath of this as well on email. We've done that before now, so do feel free to drop us an email. But otherwise, or any other comments from you guys? Anything to add?
I would just add, if you're on Instagram, we're all massively what's the word, active, there we go. We're all, I'm glad I'm also the one whose brain isn't working. We're all massively active on Instagram, so reach out, obviously. Nick does great videos, and as does Hen. Nick has got a really cute dog, so if you like dogs, he's definitely a good person to follow. But yeah, just the one thing that I would say about Instagram is make sure that you're following people that you actually like. And I know that sounds silly, but I did a massive purge on my personal one where I got rid of people that just made me feel crap about myself. So when you're looking for people to follow on Instagram, make sure that you're actually getting something out of it. Mm-hmm. So I love opening up the Assistant's Handbook because I'm like, oh, these are basic, they're not my friends, but they feel like my friends. And just being able to see that, and you get to learn. And like, there are some people who are part of like the assistants list, for example, and she will be sharing stuff. And then there's, as Hannah was saying, there's so many different ones, and like, find the person that you like to follow on Instagram, and then work out which network they're part of. Mm-hmm. And then chances are you'll also want to be part of that network. So yeah. And I will add my handle because I'm the only one who has it.
Yes, please. Yeah, do add it. Right, okay, I think next time we will talk about imposter syndrome, because it's such a big topic. Hen and I had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it, Hen? And I have been suffering from it terribly lately. And really just in the last week, I've managed to get over that and get a handle on it. Lucy Chamberlain wrote a great blog on it. It's on Instagram if anybody wants to have a look at that with some great tips. But we will probably have a chat about that and how it can creep into these roles in particular, and some advice on how to overcome that as the next discussion. So we'll release that soon. As a final thing, I just want to say, some self-promotion here, that if you do follow me or the Office Management Group on LinkedIn or on Instagram, we've just released a video today of something extremely exciting. I'm peeing my pants with excitement because I'm just so excited to get this out here. It's all about celebrating, elevating and recognising the achievements of office management professionals. So please keep your eyes peeled, because that will hopefully help you get some light in your career, give you that massive pat on the back that you so thoroughly deserve, and we're going to show you off to the world. So keep your eyes peeled. Thank you so much for joining, everybody, and we will see you very soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody. Really enjoyed it. Appreciate it. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.